Hi you guys, welcome to my sourdough mini series. This is video 3, my 30-minute method of hands-on bread making. Now I specify hands-on because this takes longer technically than 30 minutes in total. But I do a method that's only about 30 minutes of hands-on working with the dough time. So that's why I call it that. But I do promise that this is a simpler method of making a loaf of daily bread for your family when you are a busy mom doing other things. This recipe can be done while you're doing the school run in the morning, while you're making your breakfast, your coffee, whatever. It can be done pretty quickly in the morning because the best part of this is when you're done the few minutes of bread making, it just sits on your counter for the entire day. And you don't have to touch it again until the evening. So if you are new, hi, my name is Rainbow and I am doing a mini series on sourdough for busy moms. I'm sharing my method after years of making sourdough and learning from different people. And this is just the method that I have found by piecing together other methods, because that's all we're ever doing anyway, is piecing together other people's methods and making something that works for us. So I just want to share this method with you guys and hopefully this finds you well and this helps encourage you to make bread, that it is possible even if you're a busy mom doing other things and you don't have a lot of time to be in the kitchen for hours and hours, because who does? So I'm gonna go feed this baby and then we're gonna get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started and make your very first loaf of sourdough. So the way a sourdough works is we are going to be making the dough today and we're not actually gonna be baking it until tomorrow because it takes a long time to ferment. We will ferment it overnight in the fridge. And I'm going to explain everything to you guys, but first the things you are going to need are as follows. You're going to need your active sourdough starter, hungry, ready to go. We bake with our sourdough starter before we feed it. We don't feed it and then bake. We bake before we feed. Mine is a little bit sad and floppy because I've been mixing it. I've been doing things with it because I've been making this video series and I'm filming it all in one day. So excuse that, it won't really matter. Again, if anybody tells you that sourdough is super fussy and you have to be very specific, I don't believe that. I've been baking a loaf of bread almost every single day for years for my family. We make beautiful, delicious bread, and I am not fussy about it. I'm not feeding my sourdough starter until like 2:30 in the afternoon today, and you know what? It's gonna live and it's gonna be fine, and it's gonna make a great loaf of bread tomorrow as well. So don't believe that you have to just be absolutely perfect to be able to bake sourdough, because it's simply not true. What you are going to need is flour of your choosing. I used unbleached white flour. You can see in the background, I just use this Robin Hood brand of non-bleached flour. You're going to need your active sourdough starter. You're going to need a large bowl and a medium smaller bowl. We're gonna use the medium/smaller bowl later, so you can just set it aside for the first little bit. You're also going to take your kitchen scale. I highly recommend this. There are recipes you can find, but today I'm teaching you my personal bread recipe that I use, and I measure in grams using a kitchen scale. I find it easier. You're gonna need some salt. I just use sea salt and filtered water. So right now would be a great time to grab your notepad and paper or your recipe card or whatever you want to jot this down on. And I'm going to give you my sourdough recipe. This is the recipe I've been using every single day for years now to make my family's sourdough bread. And the recipe is as follows: 98 grams of sourdough starter, 257 grams of filtered water, 8 grams of salt, and 388 grams of flour. And this recipe makes 1 loaf of bread. If you need to make 2, you could always double it, and you can double it in this process, but this makes 1 loaf. A lot of sourdough recipes out there will make enough for 2 loaves. I find that's too much for me. So this is a 1 loaf easy method. Okay, now that you have the recipe, let's get started. You also need something to mix with, and you need clean hands, I should say. Something to mix with can be anything. I want to mention that I do have a bread basket, I have a dough hook, I have some of the fancier sourdough tools that you see, but I only just bought those things this year because I felt like having them. I have baked sourdough for years using no bread basket, no fancy dough hook, just my hands, a wooden spoon, and these bowls, my kitchen scale, and my handy dandy Dutch oven. So don't feel like you need anything complicated. We'll get you baking bread with what you have. So begin by placing your bowl on your kitchen scale. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna zero it out. So it's gonna weigh the amount your bowl weighs. So we just hit power or 0, and it will go to 0 grams. So you wanna make sure this says 0. If I were to take the bowl off, it'll say negative 2,578 because that's how much my bowl weighs. So just make sure it is zeroed out, and we're gonna start with your bowl on your kitchen scale. First, we're gonna start with adding 98 grams of your sourdough starter. So just watch this number here until you see 98 grams and start adding your starter. Go little by little. You get a feel for this as you start baking. And if you go and you hit 99, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. If it's not perfectly exact, you could also scoop some out. That's okay too. We're at 92, 93, 97. Am I gonna hit it exactly? Oh, 99, good enough. That's okay for me. We're gonna set this aside and it's ready to be fed. Okay, now that I have my 99 grams of starter, 98, zero out your scale by pressing the 0 button and waiting until you see the number 0 again. Because the kitchen scale is doing all of the work, you don't have to use measuring cups or anything to add your water or any of these ingredients because you're just gonna listen to the number on the scale. Now I'm gonna go ahead right away and add 257 grams of water. Got a little overzealous and I'm at 259. So I'm just gonna scoop the tiniest little bit out. There we go. Okay, now we're gonna mix this. I'm mixing it with my dough hook, but you don't need this. You could use a spoon from your drawer, a wooden spoon, whatever. Just mix it. This is super unnecessary, I just like it. You're gonna mix it until you have this nice milky consistency like this. It'll be bubbly and your sourdough starter is now combined with that water. Okay, now you're gonna add your 8 grams of salt. I add mine to my water. Now, not everybody will do this, but again, this is my method that I'm sharing with you. I find it easier. I see no difference in my bread when I add it to the dough, so I remember it easier when I do it this way. And if you go a little over, sometimes even a little under, it's not the end of the world. Okay, then you just take your spoon or your dough hook and you just combine the salt into your liquid. Okay, zero out your scale one more time. And now see, you gotta watch it. This says one gram. So we're just gonna zero it out again until it says 0. There we go. Oh no, it wants to do 1. No, thank you. 0 grams. Now we're gonna go ahead and add our 388 grams of flour. Now, once you've got your 388 grams of flour, you can just take this off the kitchen scale, turn your kitchen scale off and put it away. Okay, now I'm gonna use my dough hook and I'm just gonna mix this together until it's mostly combined, and I can't really mix it with the dough hook anymore. I always flop flour everywhere. Apologies, I'm bouncing my sleepy baby as I do this. Okay, once we get to kind of that consistency, there's still some flour, but the dough hook isn't really doing its thing anymore. I immediately go and wet my hands. This is super important. Now that my hands are wet, I can work with the dough. You want to work with wet hands so the dough doesn't stick as badly to your hands. So I'm just going to take it off my dough hook here. And here's the fun part. You just get in there and you start combining it. No fancy ways. The nice thing is I can do this one-handed if I need to. What I do is I'm just rubbing my fingers on the edge of the bowl to get all the dough that sticks to the edge kind of incorporated in with my big ball. As you can see, I'm literally just flopping it around until there's no flour visible anymore. We're not being perfectionists about this. You want it to look rough. It's not perfect. You just combine it until there's no more fluffy flour. Okay, good enough. We're just combining it until just combined. And now what you're gonna do is you're gonna put a plate over this bowl. You're gonna set a timer for 10 minutes and set it aside. Use this time to feed your sourdough or whatever. Wash your hands, do whatever you need to do, make a coffee. And a 10-minute timer starts now. Okay, it has been 10 minutes since we will let this dough rest. Just looks like that. I'm going to wet my hands again, and then we're gonna knead it again. Okay, my hands are wet, and I'm just gonna go in, and then I'm gonna start bringing the outside of the dough into the center like this. It's a little bit hard to do it at this angle, so in a second I'm gonna put my bowl down, but I just keep going around and kind of bringing the dough into itself and giving it a good knead for a couple of minutes. This is when, again, I will just scrape the edges of the bowl because I like to get all of the dough. I'll lift it up, make sure I get the end there, stuff at the bottom. Spin your bowl as you go. And again, we're not doing anything crazy. We're just working the flour, helping to activate that yeast. And then once the dough is kind of staying in a little ball form and it's not as goopy and it's not sticking to your hands as much, then you know you're pretty much done. Mine is kind of not really sticking to my hands anymore. It's kind of staying in this ball formation. I can pick it up and mess with it. It's not really as goopy. Okay, so we're just gonna leave it in this bowl again. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not forming it into any specific shape. Putting our plate or a lid, whatever, I use a plate, back onto our bowl, and we're gonna leave it for 30 minutes. Now, like I said, we're only spending about 30 minutes with our hands in the dough total through this process, but there is a break in between the initial making like this. We're leaving it for 10 minutes and then we're leaving it for 30 minutes. We will touch it one more time and then we leave it for 6 hours. So I'll see you in 30 minutes. Okay, it has been 30 minutes. So now we bring this back. I have washed this counter completely. Now, depending on your counter types, you could put a little bit of water on your counter and just wet the surface a little bit. I tend to not. I'm just gonna go wet my hands. I find I like that my dough sticks to my counter a little bit because it makes it easier for me to stretch it. I'm gonna begin the stretch and fold process of the dough, and we're gonna roll it into our nice little sourdough ball. It's very easy and quick. If you remember our other bowl at the beginning of this video, this is where this guy comes into play. Okay, so with wet hands, I'm going to just, here's our dough that we let sit for 30 minutes. I'm just gonna scrape it out of the bowl, pull it out with my fingers, plop it on the counter. If you follow me on Instagram, then you've seen me do this a lot of times. Often I'll just set the camera while I am hanging out. Okay, so your dough should be nice and stretchy, like this. Nice and easy to work with, kind of like Play-Doh. So you can just put it down on your counter and slowly, gently but firmly, start stretching it out. We're gonna make it into a rectangle shape. If your dough tears, it's okay. It means the elasticity is not that great, but it will still make a lovely loaf of bread that will feed your family, and that's what matters here, right? We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for good bread that is nice to eat, that will feed your hungry kids. See, my dough has good stretch to it because my starter is a happy one. Okay, once we have this rough rectangle shape, as you can see, this is not perfect, but again, we are not aiming for perfection here. I'm gonna fold this into thirds. We're gonna take the top part and we're gonna fold it into the center. We're gonna take this part, we're gonna fold that into the center. And then we're gonna fold it 3 times. Twice, into 3 sections. 2. Okay, now you're left with this little rectangle, and I'm gonna treat it like a square and fold the corners into the center. 1 corner, 2 corner, 3 corner, 4 corner. Now we're gonna flip it over to its other side, and we have this. So now we're just gonna start this push and pull method, and this is how you shape dough. What we're doing is we're creating tension across the top of the dough, and this is gonna help it rise and just take its shape. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your palm, you're gonna push the dough away from you and pull while also kind of tucking. So you're doing this like motion like this. almost, but a less exaggerated form of this. So it's like this, but we are doing this little bit of a tuck. Do you see? Push away, pull towards. Push away, pull towards. And you can do it with two hands, or you can push it away and pull it towards you with two hands. If you're busy and you only have one hand, this can be done one-handed if you've got a baby on your hip, or you're tending to something else. You don't have to do this for very long. Again, this is the easy sourdough method. I know you've seen people do multiple stretch and folds. I am not one of those people. I make a delicious loaf of sourdough every single day without doing multiple folds, without doing a million steps. This is the easy 30 minutes of hands-on work. We're only gonna do this for under a minute until we can see the surface of our dough is nice and smooth. We don't really want to see too much tearing or too many bubbles being formed. We created a nice, smooth little pot. If there is some tearing, that's okay. If there's a little bit of bubbles, that's okay. So now that we have this like nice, smooth little ball, we're gonna take our clean, medium-sized bowl and we're gonna pop it in there. We're just gonna pick it up like this and dunk it straight into our bowl. Just set it in there. Then you're gonna take the same plate you were using and cover your bowl, and it's gonna sit on your counter for 6 hours. So you can go on with the rest of your day, and we will come back to this after 6 hours later tonight. I store mine on the back of my stove because again, that's the warmest spot, and so that's the best place it rises. All right, you guys, it is 6 hours later. I don't know how much of me you can see. I've covered myself with an apron because I'm in my pajamas. I just showered.
I cannot see your head.
Good. My daughter just bumped into the camera.
Oh, sorry.
My bird. Oh my God.
Oh my, it's overflowing.
Oh my God. Here's a funny, my sourdough's never overflowed before, but here we are. So it has been 6 hours later. I just said the wrong number. My kid corrected me. So it's chaotic at night here. Sorry. Clean countertop is all you need. You take the plate off, and here is my sourdough after sitting for 6 hours. So once again, you're gonna go wet your hands, and you're just gonna claw your dough out of the bowl. It's really fluffy and soft and so fun to play with at this point. There's always some leftover bits in the bowl that I like to just scrape with my fingers and get all of it out. Okay, so here's our blob. Now again, we're not gonna stretch it. We're just gonna fold it back into those like 4 corners, even though it's round. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Flip it over, and we're gonna do the same thing we did earlier, just creating tension with that same movement. Push, scoop, like this towards you. Push away, pull towards. And you'll notice that your dough is really fluffy. It feels like cloudy Play-Doh. It's so fun to play with at this point. And again, there's gonna be some bubbles forming. That's okay, just try and like push them under. And you're just trying to create enough tension in the top. You don't wanna play with it too much. You don't wanna do it so much that you're getting a ton of bubbles, and you don't wanna get a ton of tearing, but you just want to form it into a nice little firm dough ball again. Okay, so now we have our happy little dough ball, and this is the part where if you have a fancy bread basket, you can use that. Again, I will leave a link for my Amazon purchase down below where I got this whole kit with everything in it. You don't need this. You could just use the bowl that you put it in for the day that you proofed it in. And all you would do is put a clean tea towel, even paper towel in a pinch. So you're either working with your bread basket or a bowl with paper towel or a tea towel in it. Okay, so all we're gonna do is take a pinch of flour. I'm sorry, you guys, my house is so noisy, and everybody is just, what's mom doing? Why is she talking? Okay, so we just sprinkle some flour in there. You want a good even coat, because you do not want it to stick to your cloth. So whether this is a towel or a paper towel or a bread basket, whatever, you want a good coating. Carly. Okay, so once that is floured, you're just gonna scoop your dough ball up again, and you're gonna flip it upside down into your basket or bowl. So that nice smooth side is now in there, facing down. And then you take another pinch of flour. Again, you guys, I'm so sorry. My house is so noisy. There's no stopping it at this point.
No.
Jesus. This is comical. I wish I could show you behind the scenes. Oh my God. Okay, shh. Try and be quiet. Okay, so you just sprinkle some flour on the top, which was the bottom. You spread it around so you've covered all the dough that you can see, because that will just prevent it from drying out and getting like crunchy. So now that's what you got. Your little jiggly dough. It's all floured. You take the same plate you've been using all day and you just pop it on top of your bowl or your basket. And we're gonna put this in the fridge overnight now. And it's gonna finish rising and finish fermenting and finish proofing in the fridge. And then we will go on to baking in the next video. Okay, again, excuse me, I just got out of the shower. It is 9:30 at night. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this was helpful. This is my method of only spending about 30 minutes actively with the dough. Obviously, it was an entire day of a process, but we had such huge chunks between each step of bread that it really is a great method for busy people. We're not working with the dough for a long time. You can do that 10 minutes and 30 minutes while you're getting ready. Like, let's say you have to drop off kids at school. You can get the dough ready up until that 30-minute point, and then you can go, drop your kids off at school, and then in the half an hour that it takes, you can be back and finish that process. And then you have 6 hours until you have to touch the dough again. And as you can see, the camera was rolling that whole time. That did not take long to just really quickly roll that ball again and pop it in the fridge. I hope this encourages you to bake your own bread, and we will see you in the next video of the series, which is baking your sourdough. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.